We spend a massive amount of time trying to fix our behaviours. We look at our patterns, our workaholism, our need to be perfect, our people pleasing, and we treat them like flaws that need to be violently ripped out. We'll take a personality test and get a 4-letter stamp and think that explains it. We hope that that gives us an answer. We've, in this video series, looked at different ways of mapping out these patterns. And last week we looked at the physical tension that we carry in our bodies. But this week we're going to step into the internal noise in our minds. We're going to look at the tyranny of the shoulds. Have you ever stopped in the middle of a particularly chaotic day and listened to your internal commentary? What do you hear? Would you hear, I should be working harder. I should be perfect. People should like me. I should be able to fix this. If you lift the curtain on that internal commentary, you might find that what you thought were permanent character traits are actually just some old survival mechanisms that we forgot to turn off. Really, we're wearing a mask. It's a performance in order to buy safety and avoid conflict. In person-centered theory, Carl Rogers believed that this performance is based on conditions of worth that we internalized about ourselves in childhood. Person-centered theory is a framework that explains that exhausting trade-off that we make in order to avoid conflict and be accepted. And to do that, understand why that is, we have to look at the architecture of our childhood development, right? So to a child, the world completely lacks predictability. And in order to navigate that chaos safely, they will suppress their genuine wants and needs in order to buy safety and avoid conflict and gain acceptance. It's almost like we're handed an unwritten set of rules. In order to have love and feel connection, I must be looking after others first. I must be quiet. I must be achieving, excelling. Because our fundamental need for connection is a matter of emotional survival, we will take these unwritten rules of who I must be in order to be accepted, and we use them to create an ideal self. When you create an ideal self which is unattainable, you have your real self that you don't want to be, so you become the third self, a despised self. Person-centered theory concerns itself with your idea of the ideal self, that performance that you put on for everyone else. And while we appear as adults on the surface, this ideal self that we carry through actually shows us that underneath that mature presentation, we are just a collection of our childhood survival strategies that we forgot to turn off. Carl Rogers defined this performance as incongruence, in that your outward actions would not match your internal wants and needs or your internal feelings. And this performance of the ideal self leaves us feeling exhausted, like we're constantly stuck in a conflict between our real self and who we should be. And look, to be entirely transparent with you, I'm not a counsellor, psychotherapist or psychologist. I'm just a fellow traveller who's deeply fascinated by the architecture of psychotherapeutic and counselling modalities. And I want to share them here with you as a lens to look at your life through, to get a better understanding of who we are as people, and even as a bridge to a real counsellor, a step into therapy. But this work that we can do in this journaling or in this psychoeducation, if you like, will allow us to look beneath this mask that we wear, this ideal self, these shoulds that we operate under every day. There is a link in the description or two to some counselling directories, so that if you wanted to find someone to go on that journey with you, to be a companion and help you safely navigate things that may be too hard to burden, the things that we find here, I highly recommend it. But for this week, let's look at this experiment. I want you to think of an interaction over the last 7 days where you suppressed a genuine want, or you swallowed some words to avoid conflict. Run it all the way to the end without censorship. No judgment on what you write down. If you go off on a tangent, then that's fine. When you come to the end, think about the feelings that you were left with, and think about the feelings that you had during that interaction, and write down what rules you think you were following. What fundamental law were you following in order to be acceptable to other people? And see what comes up. If you wanted a more purpose-made container for that investigative work and a little bit of an expansion on person-centered theory, I've made one over at beneaththerepeat.com. But either way, an old notebook or scrap piece of paper is going to work just fine. But thanks for taking the time, sitting with me, and we can continue to look beneath the repeat.